Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the MyFootballWriter YouTube channel, and welcome back to NODGE Spotlight. We have no football to talk about, but we do have some potential big news. I'm, of course, joined by Will Grant. William, how have you been? It's been a while since we've done a podcast or a video. Obviously, the season is long gone now, but how have you been enjoying the off season?
Mate, it's been absolutely wonderful. And I think we chose the perfect summer's day to record, didn't we? Albeit it isn't quite sweltering yet, but yeah, it feels like right now we are about to hit the start of a new era for Norwich, and hopefully it all comes to fruition and everything works out well. But for now, no weekend without Norwich right now is a blessing. So I'm very well, mate. How are you doing? And also, more importantly, I heard you have been away on holiday somewhere, so please reveal to our listeners or watchers where you've been.
Yes, well, I've been on safari in South Africa for the last 2 weeks, so it's why I'm ever so slightly more tanned. But yes, I had a fantastic time. I was very lucky to have had no Norwich news whilst I was away. I was occasionally checking with the very sporadic internet that I had in the middle of the bush in Africa, and nothing really happened until I got back. And this is, of course, what we're here to talk about now. Of course, it hasn't been confirmed just yet. But if you're watching the video in the future, then it probably has already been confirmed that our managerial search is finally coming to an end with Liam Manning being our man. Liam Manning, who, some people in the podcast might have called as an ideal, as, successor to Johannes Hoff Thorup. I'm not naming names, but, I'm a little bit of an oracle. Obviously, he's the first Norfolk-born coach since Dave Stringer, and probably the first ever Norwich coach to be from Bungay High School. So there you go. Yeah, no, it's true. I googled it. Obviously, started off his career in the academy at West Ham. Went to a Belgian second-tier team called Lommel. Was very successful with MK Dons. Then moved on to Oxford, where he was then poached by Bristol City, who, of course, last season finished sixth, obviously, in the playoffs. We won't talk about how they got on in the playoffs, but generally speaking, at 39 years old, the obviously English Norfolk-born coach is regarded as probably one of the more promising managers in the entire division. So you could argue this is an incredible coup for Norwich City. Will, what are sort of your first thoughts? Obviously, there's a lot of different names that were floated around in terms of who was linked. We've gone back and forth as to who we would like and who we wouldn't like. Are you happy? Is this, something that you're confident with, or any hesitations early doors?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I was very, very excited by the news, but I think the best word for me to use is probably the word safe. Um, I think Norwich right now we're at a place where it feels like after a year of turbulation, really, we had a lot of players, for me especially, that I don't think performed very well. And I think in previous years we've kind of had some luxuries to an extent that we've had the likes of maybe Borges signs or Josh Sargent obviously stay like another year, for example, when the likes of maybe Rowe or Sarah depart. But this year it just felt a bit different because I think we all expect the likes of Nunes, Sargent, and Signs all to go. So it felt like Norwich needed to actually get a very, very good, talented head coach into the building for me, and not someone who probably relies on individual quality as much as well. So I think Manning ticks those boxes for me. I think he's a manager as well who can really improve a team, especially at Bristol City as well. I think he didn't have the most great finances really as well. So I think that's a very, very big tick in the box for Norwich, that you kind of got a reliable operator who is very, very successful at developing players. I think in terms of style of play, that's going to be what really fascinates me, to be honest with you, mate, because it feels like what we've read and what we've seen in his previous teams is that he's a manager that is very, very adaptable. And I just wonder, because it feels like everyone sees Norwich as this side who are very fun to watch, possession orientated. I wonder how his approach will maybe during home games in particular about how well it might be received. But we'll see. Time will come for me, and the thing is, because obviously Napper did state, obviously in his post-match presses and stuff like that, that he wants this team to be competing for the playoffs. And for me, that still feels quite a while away. That yet actually for that to happen. So I think just bringing in Manning is a very, very good, sensible choice, because I think he'll bring you some real good solidity for now as well. But I'll be lying to you, mate, if I don't see if I'll be very surprised if we see Manning as a manager maybe in the Premier League, for example. But I think what he will do is stabilise us and get us moving in the right direction. So I think my overriding emotion is I'm content. I think he'll bring us some small progress, but I don't see drastic change that Manning will bring into the club. But I think definitely he'll leave his club in a good position when he does decide to leave, or when obviously we decide to sack him if that's the case. But hopefully it isn't the latter. Yourself, mate, what do you think about it?
Well, I think looking at his sort of performances at the previous clubs, obviously was sacked by MK Dons sort of in one of his first jobs just because of a poor run of form. But exactly like you said, has improved all the clubs that he's gone to, Oxford especially, and obviously Bristol City, who, bless them, it's not any disrespect to them. They were a mid-table championship team, and this season he has evolved them into a team that very much competed for the playoffs and won that very hot race that a lot of big clubs were in. Obviously, Middlesbrough and West Brom, for example, all missed out. And yeah, I think you look at especially last season. The home form for Bristol City was exceptional. Again, in terms of the caliber of manager that we were kind of looking at, it was always going to be difficult to get someone like Will Still, who's now obviously gone to Southampton, Russ, who by all accounts has apparently rejected us. Probably not that surprising. I think for a team that is 13th in the championship, for him to have jumped ship from a team that finished 6th, I do actually think it's a good move. Obviously, he has very good pedigree in League One, especially. But I mean, this season he's obviously proved that he can do it in the Championship. Again, no disrespect to Bristol City, we will probably have deeper pockets and vaster resources than them. But in terms of those resources, it doesn't mean anything if we don't get this summer right. And obviously, he'll be bringing in a lot of his backroom staff and a lot of his kind of ideologies. Obviously, the Atanasios will hopefully be there to support in the summer with their wallets. Obviously, Norwich, in terms of their form last season, petered, and there's a lot of question marks over the future of a lot of different players and the club. I mean, generally. It's a big question, but what would you say is kind of the first thing that Manning needs to sort when he goes through the door? Obviously, the obvious elephant in the room is the defensive side. But is it finding a way to, be a bit wilier away from home? Is it, figuring out and singling out which players will fit his system best? What's job one for Liam Manning?
Yeah, I think, as you stated, mate, I think it's to build a very, very strong defensive foundation, first of all. Too many times last year, and I think, to be honest with you, mate, I think even during pre-season with Johannes, it felt like defensively, it just felt like we were always at risk of conceding at any given time, really, and that was the case. So I think if we can build a very, very robust foundation to start off with, for example, I wouldn't be too surprised even if we do start the season in a free back, albeit that can be perceived as quite negative. I just think it's really important if you could just start building quite a strong core foundation of a squad yet, because realistically, we've got no core at the minute, do we? Let's be frank. Obviously, we see the likes of Borges Signs, Sargent, all depart as well, but there isn't really anyone in that midfield or defence who actually, especially for me, in my opinion, that we can actually rely on for a whole season to deliver 7 out of 10 seasons. I just can't really see it at the minute. Obviously, I think maybe the likes of Jacob Wright and Kellen Fisher, probably for me, are exceptions there. maybe also Kenny McLean as well at times as well. But for me, I think it's really important that he embeds a very, very good, first of all, a very, very good defensive framework. But secondly, it's pinpointing the areas as well which he needs to try and go recruit for as well. Because in pre-season, it's a great time for him to kind of like look to learn about his squads. Obviously, there's been some pre-season friendlies announced as well. So I definitely do expect in this time, especially that I wouldn't be surprised if he just started a free back. That isn't to say that that's be the kind of the end game shape across his whole career at Norwich, for example, because I think we've seen at MK Dons and also as well at Oxford that he did play with a fullback as well. So he's definitely a very, very adaptable coach, which is very, very good because I think especially away from home, especially as you also said, Jack, we were very, very poor. It just felt like for me the team lacked belief and courage to really, really go and get at teams away from home, really. And hopefully he tries and instills that belief in the team because I think that's going to be very, very important, really. So I think recruiting well and recruiting players kind of within his shape and kind of ideas is very, very important. But first of all, mate, he's got to get that defensive shape much better as well because it's all good, well, and relying on kind of money and players to kind of bail you out externally. But for me, what makes you a really, really good coach is working with players internally and trying to improve those guys to really, really deliver a very, very good kind of team, if you get me. Would you add any more to that, mate, or would you say that's pretty kind of accurate and fair?
Yeah, I mean, the defense we were constantly talking about, how frail it was. There's some sort of weird comments coming out about Thorup's training, about how perhaps it wasn't in line with what the players liked. So maybe it's finding a different approach to the training, maybe just to ensure that players don't get injured as much. I know a manager can't stop players from being injured, but maybe something that's kind of less intensive. Because again, if we look back at the two main problems that dumbfounded us last season, it was both injuries and our defence, which we'd all agree were massively underperforming. Angus Gunn in goal previously was statistically one of the best keepers in the division. Shane Duffy has been playing Premier League football for I cannot remember how long. Obviously, Jose Cordoba was a £3 to £4 million signing. That's not cheap. So we weren't dealing with completely academy graduates and lower league players. These were players who were performing below their means. So the idea of having a coach to come in to maybe focus on the defence a little bit more, surely those levels, can't be that far away. You mentioned about the kind of potential formation and the adaptability. There's a lot of chatter about Bristol City's sort of setup, quintessentially that back three. Obviously, you can pick holes in no matter what formation, but Bristol City still managed to beat us in 2 games with an aggregate score of 4-1. So it's not, that unsuccessful. How do you see that translating to Norwich? Do you think that he will somehow try and go with a back three, meaning that we would probably need to sign a few more centre backs? Or do you think he will try and just kind of tinker with the traditional back four and the style that we've got? Obviously, the midfield three under Thorup arguably was a bit weak and at times, nowhere to be seen. Is it now time to go back to our favourite formation of probably a 4-2-3-1?
I wish, mate, and bring back the sparking memories, but no, I don't think so. I think what he will do is I think he will probably start off with a free back. By the way, before I do go on a massive monologue again, if any of you guys do know the last time Norwich actually won a game where we started in a free back, can you please let me know, because I don't think I was born when that happened. So, but if you guys do know, then please let us know in the comment section below. Anyway, yes. Yeah, I think he'll start off with a free back. I think he'll come into the building, and I think he's got quite a pragmatic kind of thought process. Actually, Manning does, and I think he'll just see that defensively the structure wasn't there before, and I think he will try and start off with that as a priority. Then started to incorporate some real promising attacking ideas. I think that's how it's going to go. But I think as well, I don't see Manning as the kind of coach that will kind of stick to one shape across the whole season. I can see if we started to see improvement, that we're actually playing really good stuff in the free back, and he thinks maybe actually we could be a bit more attacking and a bit more expansive as a team, then I think you might go to a four back and try and get more attacking players on the pitch there as well. So I think it's going to be, for me, the important thing is, for me, is I'll be content if you start with a free back. But I think it's really important to know as well is that, especially at Carrow Road, we're at home. We have the second most expensive season tickets in the whole league, and I think fans will expect entertainment as well as results as well. And I think, especially in kind of I'd say actually probably since the last 10 years, especially, is that ever since Newton, it's felt like a Norwich manager has to play a very exciting style of play for me, especially at home at Carrow Road, because I think a lot of fans do get quite a bit annoyed if we are playing quite negatively and quite pragmatically. So I'll be very interested to see kind of how long the actual fans actually give Manning to kind of, if we do play in like a free back, kind of how long that will kind of like last with kind of like the overall kind of fan morale of things, if you get me as well. So that's a very important thing to note. But generally, I just do see, for example, him starting off in a back three and then probably going to try and develop that from then on in, really. But I think what a position for me especially, mate, which is going to be very important, I think, is the central midfielders as well, because I think we've seen across Manning's career, really, he's had great success at developing midfielders throughout his career. I mean, look at the likes of Jason Knight, obviously now. I think for me, especially as in our predictions review video, that for me, he was the most underrated player in the league. I think this season he was absolutely outstanding. Him as well, coupled alongside Cam Brannigan as well, that how well he played at Oxford was fantastic, and I believe he kind of gave Des Buckingham, the foundations after he came in to really use him in a very positive manner as well. And even as well, as we actually said pre-recorded as well, I think he had some influence in kind of Declan Rice's kind of uprise as well. So there's definitely a manager there that's very good at kind of taking midfielders to the next level. And I think if you were to ask most Norwich fans at kind of an area last year where our team was a bit lackluster, it probably would be midfield for me, especially. I'm really excited to see Jacob Wright's kind of progression under Manning. I think that could be a very exciting prospect for us, especially. But we will see kind of how he views it overall. But yeah, I think the really important position for me to look at is that kind of midfield area, and I probably do expect us to probably start in a three back shape and then kind of maybe evolve into a four back. But obviously, game scenarios, time, kind of overall fan morale, that could all change, right? We're just kind of predicting here right now as well. But generally, I do see a very adaptable coach kind of changing between game to game to try and get us 3 points each week.
Yeah, and I think that's arguably one of Thorup's faults last season was the lack of adaptability. He kind of tried it against West Brom, grinded out that 1-0 win, tried it against Burnley, and it obviously failed completely. And that, felt a bit like a kind of panic. It felt a bit like I'm probably too late. I've probably already lost it. I think. Go on.
Sorry, Jack. I was just going to go back to that West Brom game, because obviously it felt like to me, especially during that game, the amount of fans which are kind of saying, "Gosh, it was so boring," etc., etc. That could actually happen more often next season, because it feels like, obviously, we're going to touch on to it, I think, literally in the next a point or two, but it kind of feels like Ben Knapper's kind of brief has changed in kind of what he actually wants at Norwich now in terms of play style. So I just feel like we should expect more as fans, that we might see more kind of pragmatic football next season, kind of winning games by 40% possession and stuff like that, really.
Yeah, we don't like what we're not used to. We like the familiarity of Farker ball, of early Torup ball, we'll call it. But you obviously touched on it. Obviously, in terms of Nappa's search It felt a bit extensive. It felt like it was dragging on. There was sort of differing opinions as to whether the length of the search was either good just in terms of exploring all of our options, or bad in the terms of we didn't really know what we were doing. Obviously, someone like Gary O'Neill and, like I said, Pep Blinders were linked very, very heavily. Manning was kind of always in the background, and then has all of a sudden, become the front runner. Obviously, if we don't now appoint Liam Manning, and we've done this whole video, this is great content for my Twitter. But it should happen. It should happen. But yeah, do you feel like sort of Napper really kind of knew what he was sort of looking for? Do you feel like Manning was the first choice, or do you think he's sort of been rebuffed a few times, and this is kind of whatever we've got left?
I think it's so hard to kind of find an answer for that, really. But I think the best way for me to kind of describe it is, I think Ben Knapper wanted so many kind of like criteria, if you will, for this kind of new manager. It felt like he wanted someone that plays really nice football at times. He wanted someone that's kind of got that bit of like in-game now adaptability kind of thing as well. He wanted someone back in, obviously, develop young players. Obviously, a manager that could also kind of aid the academy's kind of development as well. It just felt like, for me especially, and also as well, kind of like what we were hearing, there was so much kind of factors that kind of Napper almost wanted to an extent. And I think that actually kind of got on the fan base's kind of mind as well, actually. And it's actually, to be honest with you as well, I think I'd be lying if I didn't also say as well that there was many times where I was thinking to myself, what does he actually want here? But I think generally what it was is that he wanted so much factors, really. And I think it's so hard, obviously, when you kind of want so many kind of things in a manager. The kind of like the kind of like talent pool and shortlist kind of reduces very, very very much, in terms of that you kind of go from having like loads of candidates to literally none to an extent as well. So I think it was very, very hard for someone to try and find a right kind of manager to kind of meet Napper's needs, if you will. But I think Manning is probably the closest one to that, if that makes sense. And I think Manning probably was the kind of maybe first choice that he probably would have obviously wanted, if you will. But obviously, I think there was always some kind of rumblings whether like Bristol City wanted to try and keep him, etc., stuff like that as well. But overall, he decided to come here. To be honest, it probably does make sense to him as well. Obviously, like family matters and obviously bigger budget, obviously stuff like that as well. So, look, I think there was just a lot of kind of confusion, actually, because I think as well we also saw the shortlist, didn't we? That it was Pep Linders, Gary O'Neill, and obviously Liam Manning as well. And there was so much kind of managers in there that just had such kind of varying styles of play. And I think that's probably where the kind of almost confusion actually kind of come from, if you will. So definitely, I think there was a bit of confusion about that. But I just think Napper wanted so many things, really. And I think it wasn't, for me, especially a worry that he kind of cast like his searching kind of shortlist so far and wide to an extent. I think that shows that he's very, very thorough. But I think finally we got at the right manager. But I was definitely apprehensive if we were sitting here right now, Jack, and speaking about O'Neill or Linders as a next gaffer. What about yourself?
Yeah, I agree. I kind of think Gary O'Neill, didn't really kind of fit the style at all. Obviously, Pep Blinders has got a much better job now. Apparently, he's being Pep Guardiola's assistant at Manchester City. So he could have picked Carroll Road, but instead he's picked the Etihad. I don't know why. Yeah, I mean, I think in situations like this, I think you just kind of look at where it could potentially go wrong, like what the kind of flaws in his kind of managerial style are. So I've read a little bit about what Bristol City fans have to say. Like they've sort of been questionable about his in-game management at times. Obviously, and there was some rumbles about his utilization of the academy, pretty much sort of decimating Bristol City's academy pathway. Obviously, that's a pertinent question for you, William Grant of Youth Norwich. Like we said, we spoke about him essentially developing Declan Rice. I don't think we'll be able to sign him on loan, but we can try. Yeah, Jason Knight, Max Bird, Anis Mehmeti, all fantastic young players who you would arguably say are some of the Championship's best now. Do you see sort of those comments as a concern, or I mean, does this affect the academy at all in terms of how they play? Because you mentioned before, sort of last season, how the academy was trying to play Thorup ball. Do you see sort of many changes in that regard?
Yeah, obviously a really good point. I think especially when obviously Manning was obviously announced, I was obviously looking for kind of like academy kind of bits in between there. And I just think the current state of the academy is probably that we've got a lot of talented, probably like 17, 18-year-olds. And obviously those kind of guys probably need like maybe like 2 years to kind of really adapt, to kind of really like adapt and obviously get scripts and stuff like that as well. And I just don't think right now we don't have like quite a strong academy in terms of 21s group. So I think maybe the academy kind of element to it was maybe put to the maybe a bit of like a back burner, because I just don't think everyone behind the scenes probably kind of felt that encouraged by the academy as of late, and I just think they kind of wanted to try and get someone just solely to kind of focus on the first team. I think it's a great point what you actually say about the kind of like play style bit, about us playing in man style for the academy, because I probably can answer that to an extent, because obviously we've seen so many times that he's so adaptable. So I don't know, actually probably know what kind of shape he might play to an extent. It might give the likes of maybe Ollie Lee and obviously the under 18s coaching staff as well a bit more freedom to kind of use their kind of own ideas a bit more. But look, we'll see what happens with that really. But I think definitely there'll probably be a bit more freedom for the kind of the kind of coaching staff to really try and showcase their ideas and not really try to focus kind of pinpointing the kind of philosophy under Johannes. So I think definitely that could be an interesting point as well. But I just think for right now, I think like the next wave of like Norwich Academy players who I think have got very good potential. I think probably it's in maybe like the next two or three cycles, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and obviously, there's a long list of players, like I said, that under his stewardship he's developed. Notably, two other players, Harry Darling and Scott Twine. Obviously, there's lots of chit chat online about kind of their futures, and obviously us having an aggressive transfer approach to this summer. Do you see those two players being an option for Norwich, or any of the other players that he's developed? Obviously, you've been a huge fan of Cameron Brannigan, Oxford. Do you think he would slot into the Norwich midfield, or that is there any other sort of players that we think we would fit his style and would kind of slot in at Norwich?
Yeah, so I think if Manning got the option to sign Scott Twine or Harry Darling right now, I think they would. I think Norwich would actually try and do that for him. Yeah, I think notably, I think for Norwich especially, I think there's like a big gap in that attacking midfield kind of region of the team. Obviously, you've got Forson, but obviously I think his position is quite versatile as well. So I think obviously going from a 4-3-3 to a position which probably will require more of an attacking midfielder, I think we'll definitely see some names that like Manning has worked with before. I just think that's probably going to be the case. We've seen it at Oxford, Bristol City. He likes to try and take players that he kind of knows and like he's kind of worked with before to really try and take those guys on. I think the likes of Mark Sykes, Brannigan, obviously that you mentioned as well. So there's definitely examples there of players that like he has took to new clubs as well. But yeah, I just think generally our kind of transfer policy probably really won't change too much. Obviously, I think Manning will obviously get like a say in kind of stuff as well, which kind of happens to an extent, really. But I just still think Napper's going to be the main guy that probably like leads it all. But obviously, I'm sure Napper will kind of now probably open the floor for Manning to kind of really try and get his ideas across now as well. Different systems mean different kind of profile of players will probably get brought up to fruition as well. So yes, I do see maybe a few guys that are returning. Scott Twine just seems to follow him everywhere he goes. Bless him. It almost feels like Scott Twine is like Liam Manning's son, doesn't it? In some ways, to an extent. But yeah, I don't think many Norwich fans would be a bit too sad if Twine signed for Norwich this summer. Just great free kick ability as well. So look, we'll see. time will tell, but I don't think Notch would probably change their kind of policy of recruiting players too much. What do you kind of think about it, mate?
I think it's going to be a big summer for Ben Knapper himself. And I think we were kind of questioning whether the players that we bring in are, specific to the style of whichever manager we bring in. Obviously, like we've said about the kind of playing in a back three, if that is the case, we're going to need two or three, maybe more centre backs. You can kind of weirdly see Jack Stacey thriving in a kind of right wing back role. So maybe another player just to support him and maybe push him. Again, someone like Mahovo or Crescini, a little bit more sort of forward. But yeah, that kind of midfield position, and obviously goalkeeper, which we haven't actually signed yet. It's getting very close to having George Long starting our opening game of the season. But it's like I said, it's going to be a huge season. Well, summer for Napper. Obviously, he bought a lot of players that one would argue sort of fit Thorup's system. It'll be interesting to see whether Manning looks at them and thinks, well, actually, you worked. You were a good idea then, but actually, it's not working now. That will be really kind of fascinating in terms of who stays and who goes. And I don't think there'll be any kind of any longing to keep the signings from last summer just because of the kind of transition. But again, we talk about this big promotion project. It does feel like it's kind of gone a little bit one season down the line instead of a kind of 3-year project. Now in total, it's probably a 4-year project. You kind of touched on it earlier in the video, obviously to kind of round everything off. Look into your crystal ball. Do you see Liam Manning being a success at Norwich City?
Oh gosh, what a question. I think right now it's too early to say for me. I think we're at a stage now where it feels like our squad just still needs open heart surgery, but our end goal is just so ambitious as well. Obviously, I think next year we want to try and get playoffs, but I just look at many teams around us, mate, and obviously, and you also add to that the likes of teams coming up, teams coming down. It for me, most of those teams do have very, very good core foundations. We just do not have that whatsoever. Like, we ain't got a goalie. We've got about one centre half who we kind of like have hope that could become good. A great, obviously, midfielder, Jacob Wright, and then we've got players like Nunes, Sargent, and all that going to go as well. So I just think right now, for me especially, I think what we need, especially, I know it's going to sound very, very boring and pragmatic, but I just can't see. I just can't see it, but only another year of transition because we're going to need so many new players, again in a new style of play, and it just feels very, very ambitious to kind of go from a lower mid-table team all of a sudden to a team challenging for the playoffs. Especially next year for me, I think there's going to be so much teams who spend very, 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 very well as well in terms of money. A lot of rich clubs coming up and obviously coming down as well. So I just think it's going to be very, very interesting because Napper has been very, 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 very ambitious. He wants to get into playoffs. This obviously next season coming up. And I just can't see a world where we kind of hit the ground running immediately because it just feels like we just got so much holes in the squad right now, and we just need like a bit more kind of time and a bit more kind of development to kind of go as a group yet. I don't think we have safety nets like we kind of did last year, the likes of Silent and Size, like bail us out of trouble and get us like 35 goals between them. We didn't have that. Kind of relying on like the likes of Mateo Urasek to kind of all of a sudden come good. Like, it's quite risky business, and I just think when you're in a situation, especially when you need new players to hit the ground running, I think that's very, very dangerous for me. Albeit it can happen, it does work, but I just think it's very, very risky. So I'll be very, very interested to see kind of how it goes, because I just think there could be like a bit of fan upheaval if things go a bit kind of laterally, because obviously we were promised playoffs, and obviously the fans, rightly so, we all kind of now have to judge this team whether they are a very, very good playoff team. That's what we've been told, so that's what we've got to expect. Do I think it's a bit naive? Slightly, yes, but that's what we've been told. So I don't see us getting playoffs, but overall, will the regime work? I think if he gets given time, I think it will, but I question greatly if he'll be given time.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, really, with the open heart surgery comment. There is just so much work that needs to be done. Not even from a perspective of, oh, we probably need to slightly improve the squad. No, we need to, players are going to leave. Players have already left. There are already gaps in this team. And yeah, it will be like, trying to catch quicksand. He'll be constantly trying to, juggle his squad. And, the one sort of positive you could say about last season is the profile of the players that were brought in were of the younger age bracket. They've had a season in England. This is now their second season for them to really kick on. And like we've spoken about before, the development of certain individual young players, you can see someone like Cernats really hitting the ground running under Manning. You can see maybe even someone like a Manqua Forsen hitting the ground running. I could be completely wrong with that. But the logic that he can up the performances of certain individual young players, especially, that is promising. But I think you're always kind of looking at, like I said earlier, like what are the flaws, in this manager's style. If we do go to that back three, the River End is going to get very stroppy very quickly, and Canary Call, poor Henry won't hear the end of it. So yeah, it's tricky. The fact that he's from Norfolk doesn't really mean anything, but he's a season ticket holder, so he understands Norwich fans a little bit more. He's of course not a supporter of them lot down the road. I did see somewhere that he's a Manchester United supporter, so he might be quite sad at the moment. Hopefully he doesn't instill the Ruben Amorim system and lose 1-0 to some Malaysian team, or lose to, did they lose to Hong Kong? I don't know. Anyway, we're digressing.
It's so woke, isn't it? It's so woke. Like, am I United playing friendlies against countries in late May? What's happening?
Yeah, but it's really good that we scrapped FA Cup replays. That was a really good. Anyway, we are digressing slightly, but of course, what are your thoughts on Liam Manning's impending appointment? Put them in the comments. Obviously, like and share this video. We'll obviously make lots more content over the summer as our impending fantastic transfers all come through. But yes, Liam Manning is our man. He will be the new head coach, the former Wroxham player. He's going to lead.
Support your local. Come on, man. He's going to win the lot. Come on.
There we go. That's the kind of optimism we want to hear. But yes, this has been Nodge Spotlight. Like, subscribe, comment, enjoy. We'll see you all very soon.